Captain Jake Morrison stared at the star charts on his command screen. The HSS Valiant moved slowly through the dark space at the edge of human territory. 3 months of patrol duty had been quiet. Too quiet. Morrison liked it that way. Quiet meant his crew could go home to their families. The bridge hummed with the soft sounds of working equipment. Lieutenant Amy Brooks sat at her communications station, listening to the usual chatter from nearby ships and space stations. Commander Rick Palmer checked weapon systems that hopefully would never fire. Everything was normal. Then the emergency signal came. Amy's head snapped up from her console. "Captain, I'm getting something strange. Multiple distress signals on all emergency channels. They're not human signals." Morrison walked over to her station. "Pirates?" "No, sir. These are from the Galactic Council. The signals are coming from everywhere. Dozens of different alien species, all broadcasting the same message." Rick moved closer. "What do they want?" Amy worked on her translation systems. The Valiant carried the best language computers the human military had. Even so, alien. Languages were hard to understand. "Sir, they're asking for help. Something about an ancient enemy returning. They mentioned something called the Zephyr Collective." Morrison frowned. The Galactic Council rarely talked to humans. Most alien species thought humans were too violent and dangerous. They called Earth a death world because of its harsh weather, earthquakes, and deadly animals. To them, any species that could survive on such a planet had to be crazy. "Can you clean up the signal?" "I want to hear this myself." Amy's fingers moved over her controls. The alien voices became clearer. Even through the translation, Morrison could hear the fear in them. These beings were terrified. The main message played through the bridge speakers. A voice that sounded like wind through crystal spoke the words. "Emergency broadcast to all species capable of military response. The Zephyr have awakened. They move between the stars, consuming all life. Our fleets cannot stop them. We seek the warriors of the death world called Earth. We call upon the Deathworlders." Morrison felt his blood run cold. He had heard stories about the Zephyr from old space traders. They were supposed to be a myth. Ancient monsters that ate entire planets and disappeared back into the void between galaxies. "Amy, get me Dr. Lisa Grant from the science lab." Minutes later, Dr. Grant stepped onto the bridge. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who knew more about alien life than anyone else on the ship. Morrison played the message for her. Grant listened carefully. When it finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, the Zephyr are not a myth. They're real, and they're the worst thing in the galaxy. Tell me what you know." Grant pulled up data on the main screen. "They're parasites, but not like any Earth parasite. They feed on the life force of intelligent beings, not just individuals, but entire civilizations. They consume the neural energy of billions of minds at once." Rick stepped forward. "How do they do that?" "They're a hive mind species, millions of individual creatures that think as one. When they attack a planet, they link their minds to the population and slowly drain away their consciousness. The victims stay alive, but become empty shells. Then the Zephyr move to the next world." Morrison studied the data. "Why haven't we heard about them before?" "Because they sleep for thousands of years between feeding cycles. The last time they were active, humans hadn't even invented writing. Every species that survived built legends about them. Most thought they were just stories." Amy's console beeped again. "Sir, I'm getting more messages. The signals are getting weaker. I think some of the senders have stopped broadcasting." Morrison felt a chill. If the aliens were right, entire civilizations were dying while he stood here asking questions. "Dr. Grant, why are they asking for humans specifically?" Grant smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Because we're from the death world, Captain. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on nice, safe planets. Steady weather, few predators, no major disasters. They became smart and civilized, but they also became soft. And humans? Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, predators, diseases, storms. Earth threw everything it had at early humans. The ones who survived were the ones who could adapt, fight, and never give up. Rick was beginning to understand. So when other species meet something they can't handle, they run or hide. Exactly. But humans learned a long time ago that running doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to stand and fight, even when the odds are impossible. Morrison looked at his crew. They were good people. They had families waiting for them back home. He could order the ship to return to human space. No one would blame him. This wasn't humanity's war, but the aliens were calling for help. Billions of intelligent beings were dying. And for some reason, they thought humans might be able to help. Amy, how many human ships are in this sector? Checking now, sir. The cargo ship Newton's Dream is 2 days away. The patrol ship Guardian is 4 days out. There are maybe a dozen others within a week's travel. Send a message to all human vessels. Tell them to meet us at coordinates they'll get in a separate transmission. Full military emergency. Rick looked concerned. Captain, we don't have authority to start a war. Morrison turned to face his second in command. We're not starting anything, Rick. We're finishing something that started when the first human looked at a saber-toothed tiger and decided to fight it instead of running away. He walked to the communication station. Amy, open a channel on all Galactic Council emergency frequencies. Channel open, sir. Morrison took a deep breath. He was about to commit his ship and crew to a war against an enemy that had defeated civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity. The smart thing would be to run home and hope the monsters didn't follow. But Morrison had grown up on Earth. His ancestors had survived ice ages and plagues. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats and climbed mountains just to see what was on the other side. They had never learned to quit when things got hard. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human colonial fleet vessel HSS Valiant. We have received your distress call. We don't know much about this enemy, and we don't have the biggest fleet in the galaxy. But we know how to fight, and we know how to survive. He paused, thinking of his crew, his family, and the billions of humans who had never asked to be heroes, but might have to become them anyway. Galaxy, you called for the Deathworlders. Message received. We're coming, and we're bringing fire. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching the biggest screen in human space. Red dots showed every human ship moving toward the rally point at Alpha Centauri. In 48 hours, she had organized the largest military force in human history. Her aide, Colonel Pete Johnson, handed her a coffee. Admiral, we have 300 ships confirmed. Everything from Navy destroyers to mining vessels. Even some civilian cargo haulers volunteered. Kate studied the numbers. 300 ships sounded like a lot, until you remembered that the aliens were talking about an enemy that had eaten entire galactic civilizations. Any word from Earth Command? President Martinez gave us full authority. Every colony is sending what they can. Mars is contributing their heavy assault ships. The Europa stations are loading their ice haulers with nuclear charges. Kate nodded. Humans had always been good at turning peaceful tools into weapons. Ice haulers were designed to move frozen water between space stations. Fill them with nuclear bombs instead, and they became flying death traps that could destroy anything they hit. On Mars, General Ben Carter walked through the weapons depot with Chief Engineer Nina Walsh. The Red Planet had become humanity's main military production center. Factories that once made mining equipment now built guns and missiles. How many planet crackers can we deploy? Ben asked. Nina checked her tablet. 16 are ready now. We can have 20 more by next week. But General, these things were built to break apart asteroids for mining. Using them as weapons is crazy. Ben smiled. Nina, crazy is what humans do best. The aliens asked for Deathworlders. They're going to get them. The planet crackers were massive kinetic weapons. They fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds, hitting targets with the force of nuclear bombs, but without the radiation. Miners used them to split apart asteroids. The military planned to use them to split apart enemy ships. In the outer colonies, Captain Steve Hughes was racing his transport ship, the Horizon Dawn, through dangerous space. His mission was to evacuate civilians from the path of the approaching enemy. Each trip brought his ship closer to the advancing HFY scouts. His navigator, Lieutenant Carol Davis, plotted their next jump. Captain, the colony on Kepler Station has 3 million people. We can only carry 5,000 per trip. Steve looked at the star charts. The enemy was moving fast, too fast. How many ships do we have for evacuation? 47 transport vessels total. But sir, even if we work around the clock, we can't save everyone. Steve felt the weight of those numbers. 3 million people, and only enough ships to save a fraction of them. But he had learned something important in his 20 years of space travel. You save who you can, and you don't stop trying until the very end. Carl, send a message to all evacuation ships. Tell them to strip out everything non-essential. Cargo space, crew quarters, even life support equipment. We're going to pack people in like cargo and make as many trips as possible. On Titan, Sergeant Major Tony Rivera trained the volunteers who kept arriving from across human space. These weren't professional soldiers. They were farmers, miners, factory workers, and shop owners who had left their families to fight an enemy they didn't understand. Rivera watched a group of civilian volunteers try to figure out how to use military rifles. Most had never held a weapon designed to kill people. Listen up, he shouted. The enemy we're facing has conquered the galaxy. They've destroyed civilizations that were building spaceships when humans were still living in caves. The volunteers looked scared. That was good. Fear kept you alive. But here's what those fancy alien civilizations didn't have, Rivera continued. They didn't have mothers who had to hunt saber-toothed tigers to feed their children. They didn't have fathers who walked across ice ages to find new homes. They didn't have ancestors who looked at an ocean and decided to sail across it just to see what was on the other side. He picked up his rifle. This weapon can kill the enemy. So can a mining laser, a cargo hook, or a wrench if you swing it. Hard enough. The aliens are asking for our help because we know something they forgot. When something tries to kill you, you kill it back. In the research labs on Ceres Station, Dr. Elena Cross was making the discovery that would change everything. She had been studying the few records about HFY biology that the aliens had sent. Her assistant, Dr. Mark Wilson, looked up from his microscope. Elena, these brain scans are interesting. The HFY seemed to feed on neural patterns from intelligent species. Elena studied the data. Mark, look at this. They prefer species with ordered, logical thought patterns. The more organized and peaceful a species is, the easier it is for them to feed. What about humans? Elena pulled up brain scans from human volunteers. The patterns were completely different from the alien samples. Where alien thoughts moved in neat, organized waves, human thoughts looked like chaos. Random spikes, sudden changes, and constant background noise from emotional responses. My God, Elena whispered. Mark, human brains are like a storm compared to alien minds. All that chaos from living on a death world, all those stress responses and survival instincts. The Zephyri might not be able to feed on us at all. You mean we're immune? Not immune. But we might be like poison to them. Their feeding process is designed for orderly minds. Human thoughts are so chaotic and aggressive that trying to feed on us could damage their hive mind. Elena realized she was looking at humanity's greatest weapon. Not their ships or guns, but their minds. Brains shaped by millions of years of surviving on a planet that tried to kill everything that lived on it. Back on Luna Base, Admiral Sullivan received reports from across human space. The fleet was gathering. Weapons were being loaded. Volunteers were training. But the most important news came from Dr. Cross. "Admiral," Elena's voice came through the communication system, "I need to speak with you immediately. I think I know why the aliens specifically asked for humans." An hour later, Sullivan understood. The galaxy hadn't just asked for the toughest warriors they knew. They had unknowingly asked for the one species that might actually be able to hurt the Zephyri. Sullivan looked at the massive fleet assembling at Alpha Centauri. 300 ships carrying humans who had volunteered to fight an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. Most would probably die. But they were going anyway, because that's what humans did when someone needed help. She opened a channel to all human forces. "This is Admiral Sullivan. We've just learned something important about our enemy. They feed on minds, but human minds are different. We evolved on a world that taught us to fight, to adapt, and to never give up. That evolution might be exactly what we need to win this war." She paused, thinking about her own family back on Earth. Her children would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was no longer seen as primitive Deathworlders, but as the species that saved everyone else. "All ships, prepare for jump to the rally point. The galaxy asked for Deathworlders. Let's show them what that really means." Captain Jake Morrison watched the Kepler station grow larger on his screen. A massive space habitat was home to 3 million people. Families, children, workers who had never expected to see war. Now the Zephyri were coming, and someone had. To buy time for the evacuation ships, the Valiant led a small task force toward the station. 5 other human ships followed them. Against them came a Zephyri fleet that looked like a swarm of dark insects. Morrison counted at least 200 enemy vessels. "Captain," Rick Palmer said quietly, "those are not good odds." Morrison nodded. 6 ships against 200. Any sane military commander would retreat. But the evacuation transports needed 6 more hours to finish loading civilians. Without those 6 hours, millions would die. "Amy, open a channel to all ships in our task force." "Channel open, sir." Morrison looked at the faces of his fellow captains on the communication screen. He had served with most of them for years. Good people with families waiting at home. Everyone knows the situation. We hold this position for 6 hours. No matter what. Captain Linda Hayes of the Destroyer Ranger spoke first. "Jake, my crew is ready. We've been looking for a real fight." Commander Bill Foster of the Corvette Storm agreed. "These things have been eating planets for thousands of years. Time someone showed them what humans can do." The Zephyri fleet moved closer. Their ships were unlike anything in human databases. They looked organic, like they had been grown instead of built. Dark hulls that seemed to absorb light. No visible weapons, but sensors showed massive energy readings. Lieutenant Commander Frank Torres commanded the destroyer Hammer. His ship was the fastest in the task force. "Captain Morrison, I'm reading strange energy patterns from the enemy ships. They're not using normal engines or weapons." Dr. Grant studied the sensor data from the Valiant science station. "Captain, I think their ships are alive. Biological vessels that respond to the hive mind. That's how they coordinate so perfectly." The first Zephyri ships opened fire. Beams of dark energy lashed out toward the human vessels. Morrison felt the Valiant shake as the shields absorbed the hit. Return fire. All weapons. The human ships lit up space with missile trails and energy beams. But the Zephyri moved like a flock of birds. When one ship was targeted, the others shifted position to protect it. Their coordination was perfect. Rick, we need a new approach. Fighting them like a normal fleet isn't working. Rick studied the tactical display. Sir, what if we don't fight like a fleet? What if we fight like humans? Morrison understood immediately. Human military doctrine was built on flexibility and chaos. When a plan didn't work, you threw it away and tried something else. Other species fought in organized formations. Humans fought dirty. Frank, take your ship through the station's superstructure. Use the habitat rings as cover. Torres grinned on the communication screen. Copy that. I always wanted to try some crazy flying. The hammer accelerated toward Kepler Station. The massive habitat had rotating rings that provided gravity for the civilian population. Torres flew his destroyer between the rings, using them as shields while firing at the Zephyri ships on the other side. The enemy tried to follow, but their coordination worked against them. In the tight spaces around the station, they couldn't move as a group. Individual ships had to make their own decisions, and they weren't good at that. It's working, Amy reported. The enemy formation is breaking up, but there were still too many of them. Morrison watched his task force take hit after hit. The Corvette Storm lost engines and was drifting. The frigate Dawn had hull breaches. On 3 decks in the Valiant's engine room, Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez worked miracles keeping the ship fighting. When the main weapons lost power, she rerouted energy through systems never meant to handle the load. Rosa, Morrison called. On the intercom, I need everything you can give me. Captain, I'm already giving you everything. But if you want more, I can overload the industrial fabricators. Turn them into one-shot weapons. Morrison blinked. The fabricators were used to manufacture ship parts during long missions. Can that actually work? Sir, anything that can hold pressure can be a weapon. Anything that can't hold pressure can be a bomb. Give me 5 minutes. The Zephyri kept pressing their attack. Their coordination was perfect, but Morrison was beginning to see a pattern. They moved like a school of fish, all responding to the same signals. If you could disrupt those signals. Frank, I need you to do something crazy. Ramming speed toward the center of their formation. Torres didn't hesitate. On my way, Captain. The hammer accelerated directly toward the largest cluster of Zephyri ships. At the last second, Torres fired every weapon at once and triggered his ship's self-destruct. The explosion tore through the enemy formation like a rock thrown into. Upon dot suddenly, the perfect Zephyri coordination fell apart. Ships crashed into each other. Some fired on their own vessels. The hive mind connection had been disrupted, and individual ships didn't know how to function alone. Rosa, tell me you have something ready. Just finished, Captain. Industrial fabricator. Number 3 is now a really big gun, but I can only fire it once before it destroys itself. Do it. The Valiant shuddered as Rosa's improvised weapon fired. A stream of superheated metal tore through 6 Zephyri ships in a line. The enemy vessels burst apart like soap bubbles. Corporal Dan Fisher was leading a damage control team when he noticed something strange. Debris from destroyed Zephyri ships was hitting the Valiant's hull. But instead of bouncing off, pieces were sticking and spreading like some kind of infection. Dan studied the alien material through a porthole. This stuff is alive. It's trying to eat our ship. He grabbed his plasma cutter and went outside in a spacesuit. The alien hull material was indeed alive, trying to convert the Valiant's armor into more of itself. But it had one weakness. It was designed for organized, efficient conversion. Random destruction confused it. Dan started cutting the alien growth with no pattern at all. He chopped pieces here and there, burned random sections, even used his emergency explosives in places that made no tactical sense. The biological material couldn't adapt to pure chaos. Captain, this is Fisher. I found something important. These ships can't handle random damage. Their biology is too organized. If we hit them with enough chaos, they fall apart. Morrison felt something click in his mind. The Zephyri were perfect predators, evolved to fight organized civilizations. But humans weren't organized. They were survivors who had learned to find opportunity in disaster. All ships, new battle plan. Stop trying to fight smart. Fight like humans. Hit them with everything, from every direction, with no coordination at all. The remaining human ships spread out and attacked like wild animals. They fired weapons in random patterns, changed direction without warning, and used debris as weapons. The Zephyri couldn't predict what the humans would do next, because the humans didn't know either. One by one, enemy ships began to fall. Not because the humans were stronger, but because the Zephyri couldn't adapt to pure chaos. Amy's console beeped. Captain, message from the evacuation fleet. They're ready to jump out with the last load of civilians. Morrison looked around his damaged bridge. 3 of his 6 ships were gone, and the survivors were barely holding together. But they had done it. 3 million people were safe. All ships, mission accomplished. Time to go home. As the human task force limped away from Kepler Station, Morrison realized something important. They had found the key to fighting the Zephyri. Not superior technology or numbers, but controlled chaos. The one thing humans did better than any other species in the galaxy. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the largest human fleet ever assembled. 300 ships from every corner of human space waited at the rally point. Cargo haulers loaded with nuclear bombs. Mining vessels carrying planet crackers. Military. Destroyers armed with chaos weapons designed by humans who had learned to turn disorder into victory. The reports from Kepler Station had changed everything. Captain Morrison's discovery that the Zephyri couldn't handle random attacks had spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Now every ship captain was thinking of new ways to fight dirty. Captain Val Johnson commanded a group of modified freighters that had volunteered for the most dangerous mission. Her ships were loaded with nuclear charges and piloted by crews who knew they probably wouldn't come home. They called themselves the Chaos Pack. Admiral, Val's voice came through the communication system. My ships are ready for Operation Wildfire. We'll hit them behind their lines and make as much noise as possible. Sullivan nodded. The plan was simple and completely insane. While the main fleet engaged the Zephyri in battle, the Chaos Pack would jump deep behind enemy lines and attack everything they could find. Not to win battles, but to create confusion. On the bridge of the research ship Deep Explorer, Commander Beth Adams checked her ship's special cargo one more time. Dr. Elena Cross had created something that might end the war. A computer virus based on human neural patterns, designed to spread through the Zephyri hive mind like a disease. Beth, Dr. Cross said over the intercom, remember, you have to get the virus directly into their main command structure, the big bioconstruct they use as a dimensional gateway. Beth looked at her crew. They were scientists, not soldiers. But they had volunteered for a suicide mission because someone had to do it. Don't worry, Elena. We'll get your virus to where it needs to go. The Zephyri main fleet appeared on long-range sensors. Thousands of organic ships arranged in perfect formation around a massive structure that hurt to look at. The dimensional gateway was the size of a small moon, covered in writhing biological components that seemed to twist space around them. Admiral Carl Henderson commanded the main battle fleet from his flagship, the Defiance. He had fought pirates and rebels, but never anything like this. All ships, remember what we learned at Kepler Station. Don't fight like other species. Fight like humans. The battle began with the Chaos Pack jumping directly into the middle of the enemy formation. Val Johnson's freighters scattered in all directions, firing nuclear weapons and ramming into enemy ships. The Zephyri tried to respond with their usual perfect coordination, but random attacks from inside their own formation made that impossible. "It's working," Henderson reported. "Their formation is breaking down. All ships advance and engage." The human fleet charged forward in loose groups, each ship captain choosing their own targets and tactics. Some used the planet crackers to punch holes through multiple enemy vessels. Others fired everything at once and then rammed damaged ships. A few captains ordered their crews to sing old Earth songs while they fought, just to add more chaos to their neural patterns. The Zephyri had never faced anything like it. For millions of years, they had conquered organized civilizations that fought with discipline and logic. Humans fought like their ancestors did against saber-toothed tigers. No plan, no formation, just pure survival instinct and random violence. The dimensional gateway was still active. Through it, more Zephyri ships poured into normal space. As long as the gateway remained open, the enemy had unlimited reinforcements. "Beth, it's time," Admiral Sullivan transmitted to the Deep Explorer. "Get that virus to the gateway." Commander Adams piloted her research ship through the chaos of battle. The Deep Explorer wasn't built for combat. It was a science vessel designed to study stars and planets. But today it carried the most important weapon in human history. Zephyri fighters swarmed around the little ship. Adams flew like she was back home dodging asteroids in the Sol system. She rolled between energy beams, used exploding enemy ships as cover, and pushed her engines past their safety limits. "Commander," her navigator called out, "we're taking heavy damage. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 3. "Keep flying," Adams ordered. "We only need to last a few more minutes." The gateway loomed ahead of them. Up close, it was even more horrible. Biological components the size of buildings pulsed with alien life. Energy crackled between organic towers that reached into space. Itself, at the center, was a massive neural cluster that coordinated the entire Zephyri invasion. "There's our target," Adams said. "Take us in." The Deep Explorer dove toward the gateway's central brain. Enemy fire tore through the ship's hull. The engine room exploded. Life support failed on half the decks. But Adams kept flying, using gravity from the massive structure to slingshot her dying ship toward the neural cluster. "Upload in progress," Dr. Cross announced. 30 seconds to virus deployment. Zephyri defenders surrounded the human ship. Energy weapons turned the Deep Explorer's armor into molten metal. Adams felt the deck plating buckle under her feet. 15 seconds. The bridge filled with smoke. Adams could barely see her controls, but she could feel the massive alien brain ahead of him, pulsing with the thoughts of billions of Zephyri minds. "Upload complete. Virus deployed." Adams smiled as her ship broke apart around her. The virus was spreading into the gateway's neural network, carrying human chaos into the perfect order of the hive mind. The effect was immediate. The gateway's biological components began firing at each other. Massive organic towers twisted and collapsed. The energy field holding the dimensional portal open flickered and died. Throughout the Zephyri fleet, ships began turning on their own allies. The virus spread through their hive mind like fire through dry grass. Human neural patterns, shaped by millions of years of chaos and conflict, were like poison to minds that had evolved for perfect order. The enemy fleet fell apart. Some ships fled back toward their home dimension. Others simply stopped moving, as their crews lost the ability to think as one. The few survivors retreated through the collapsing gateway, sealing it behind them. Admiral Sullivan watched the enemy disappear and felt something she hadn't expected. Not victory, but sadness. The cost had been enormous. Entire human colonies lost. Thousands of ships destroyed. Brave people like Commander Adams, who would never see home again. But the galaxy was safe. The Zephyri were gone, and the Dimensional gateway was sealed. A week later, Admiral Morrison stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The alien representatives looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. They had asked for help from the Deathworlders, not knowing what that really meant. The Zephyri threat is ended, Morrison announced. They have returned to their home dimension and sealed the gateway behind them. But let me be clear about something. We didn't win because we had better weapons or smarter tactics. He looked at each alien representative in turn. We won because we're from a world that taught us never to give up. Earth made us into something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Beings who can find hope in chaos and strength in desperate times. Morrison paused, thinking of all the humans who had died to save species that had once looked down on them. The galaxy called out, and the Deathworlders answered with fire. Not the fire of destruction, but the fire of hope. Remember that the next time someone needs help, sometimes it's not the civilized species who save the day. Sometimes it's the barbarians. Dr. Grant added the final words to her mission log that night. Today we learned why Earth is called a death world. Not because it kills everything that lives there, but because it creates beings willing to die for others. The galaxy cried out, and the Deathworlders answered. The fire they brought wasn't destruction. It was hope. The war was over. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through sacrifice. They had shown the galaxy what it really meant to be human.